We're starting this video on the bleed screen because today we're talking bleed strategy guide for DC Dark Legion. That's right, I've got an October edition of the bleed strategy guide. We've made some pretty, I would say, significant changes to the look and feel of the guide again. And we've made a couple of other alterations to the recommendations because I realistically think we're going to have to start thinking about how we play this game a little bit differently, especially for all of you who are free to play and light spenders. You know, we just had this Halloween event kick-started a few days ago, and it really just brought to light that, you know, there is going to be some heavy monetization in this game going forward, especially for some of the more marquee or high level champions. All of the death metal champions are definitely going to be paywalled. We're probably going to see some power creep and some champions that really just aren't obtainable for most players. And so what we really have to do is take a step back and think about how we can grow our roster with one big team that's a little bit more easy to obtain, one that we know we're going to be able to obtain in the bleed early on and then work on some reruns for. So with that in mind, let's go over and take a look at the new bleed strategy guide, and I'll give you a quick rundown of what you need to know in order to use that guide to elevate your account. So we've done a few variations of this bleed strategy guide over time. You can go back and look at some of the previous videos, and if I haven't already removed them yet, there may be some older iterations of this bleed strategy guide and my initial bleed calendar back when we thought the bleed calendar was going to be static across all servers. So you can see kind of like the journey we've been on to try to get to this point. One thing I want to point out is why you need to follow a bleed calendar and a bleed strategy guide in the first place in this game. A lot of people who come into the game new, they don't really understand how these strategy style games work and hero collectors work. And this is just a way to try to get you to understand the nuances of actually trying to develop an account, especially for non-spenders and light spenders, in a game that really incentivizes spending and kind of penalizes not putting any money into the game. You can still develop a really nice account for this game over time, but you have to have a lot of patience, and you need to plan ahead and conserve all of your resources to make sure that you're achieving whatever goal that you've set out to achieve. And I think there are two key things that you need to understand about playing this game over time. And the first one is you really have to focus in on 10 champions, maybe 15 over a 6-month period that you're focusing all of your resources into. And ideally, you're only going to be able to obtain 2, potentially 3, depending on your luck and what team you're trying to build, bleed limited champions. So those are champions that are going to show up in the bleed in the game that you'll be able to use World Amble fragments to pull for. It's important to understand that even if you follow this guide, you may fall short of whatever your goal is, especially if you don't spend on the game. It's going to be incredibly difficult, and you're going to rely a little bit on RNG to get where you want to be on pulls, but for the most part, things should start evening out as you get to reruns for whatever characters you're trying to obtain. The hardest part of following this bleed strategy guide is you're going to have to sit out the bleed for a significant amount of the champions that become available. And there's a lot of FOMO in the game. You're just going to have to put that behind you and think about what you want your account to look like and just go from there. There are ways to obtain the 10 shard regular mythics a little bit easier. You've got the Dark Portal when you first start the game, and you can obtain a few champions there. There are different stores that you can purchase champion shards with specific resources that you're able to gain over time. You have you have mythic selector shards that you can use to go after certain champions, daily deals if you are a light spender, etc. So there are methods for you to obtain some of the non-bleed champions over time to build out your roster. The other thing is that you really want to make sure that you pick some of the most important legendary champions and make sure that those are getting cultivated as well, because you will be heavily relying on some of them like Wonder Woman, Green Arrow, Black Adam, Mira for quite a long time in your roster. So, what I've tried to do here is set up two paths for you to take. There's kind of like the good versus evil. I wanted to be a little bit fun with that. But I do think that you can pick either Superman or Joker to try to build your roster around early on. And then you can make a couple of decisions further down, like further into your playthrough, that will help you kind of like cultivate and figure out what direction you want to take. So we'll talk about the Superman path really quickly, and then we'll go over and talk about the Joker path. And after that, the rest is going to be up to you. Now, with the Superman path, you're going to have a ton of free to play viable Justice League champions to choose from early on. I mentioned some of those important legendary champions that you can go for. There's also a couple of the 10 shard mythics that you can push for as well. So if you pull a few copies of Superman in the bleed, you can get him to blue stars. You're going to have a really viable Justice League team to push all the PvE content and start getting into some league content fairly quickly. Moving from there, you have a couple of decisions that you need to make. If you are a heavy spender or even a light spender who just has to have the Superman family team, you can go after them from here, but it's either going to take a lot of spending or multiple reruns to build. You're probably going to have Superboy and Supergirl right next to each other in the bleed. You also are going to need to develop crypto over time, so definitely going to be a little bit of cost involved in getting this team up and running the way you would want it to. The second option that you have, I would say ideal free-to-play run in the game, is start out with Superman and skip every bleed until you get to Zatanna and Constantine, and then you can stop and spend everything that you have on Constantine. He is your win condition. He's a champion that you have to have as high as possible from the get-go in order for this team to work. So that is my recommendation. Free-to-play Justice League Dark, Constantine as high as you can get him. And then on reruns, you can work in getting your Zatanna higher, working getting your Constantine maybe to higher purple stars or even into yellow stars, depending on how efficient you are and whether you put any money into the game or not. And then over time, you'll also be able to replace your Wonder Woman with Swamp Thing, which is going to really, really elevate that Justice League Dark lineup and get you into the higher rungs of PvP. Now, moving over to the Joker path, this is going to be a little bit of a better path for light spenders willing to buy anvils because there's so many important bleeds back to back. You're going to skip Superman, obviously, but you're going to go for Joker, and then you've got Scarecrow, and you have a decision to make whether you want to go after Deathstroke or Sinestro. Now, I think for your for your non-spenders and very light spenders, it may make sense now to just go for an Arkham build. It's not going to be quite as strong in PvP, but you really aren't going to be able to compete that much in PvP anyway, regardless of which path you take if you're a non-spender. So I think they've done a ton to buff Scarecrow and Joker in a lot of the PvE modes over the last few months. I mean, they've gotten more buffs as a group than the rest of the game combined, it feels like. So incredible team with your Arkham lineup that is 100% worth building. And I think that's a great option for non-spenders. If you want to spend a little bit of money on the game, I do think going after Legion of Doom is going to be where the money is. If you go this Joker route, you can do, for some light spenders, you can do kind of like an Arkham's Most Wanted Legion of Doom hybrid team. And for heavy spenders, obviously you just want to steamroll that Scarecrow into Deathstroke and Sinestro, get your Lex Luthor up as high as you can get him, and go for a full Legion of Doom team, which continues to be a menace in PvP. And then, there's a little bit more progression here for the Joker side of things, or the evil side, because you can actually go ahead and build your Justice League Dark as well. And, depending on, even if you're a kind of a light spender here, if you're able to get Scarecrow and Sinestro into your account, they make a really nice additions into a Justice League Dark team. So you can run Constantine, Fate, Raven, Scarecrow, and Sinestro, or you can also run a version where you take Scarecrow out, run one tank, and throw Zatanna in. A lot of options where you can really, really build up your damage for Constantine, and it's a really fun way to play. Not quite as free to play friendly because there are so many bleed champions that you're having to go for there. Again, I'm just trying to give some options for a wide range of players here, and how you're going to see your teams progress over time. Again, you could go the Joker route, go for just Joker and Scarecrow, and then see if you could squeeze in Constantine and Zatanna, or even just Constantine. But it's going to be a little bit harder to go for, like, full free to play on the Joker path, but definitely possible if you go for just that Arkham's Most Wanted team. The last thing we want to talk about in terms of team building and team progression is Nightwing. Now, I've mentioned this in plenty of videos before. I think Nightwing is one of the best free-to-play champions that you can get standalone. He's very, very plug and play, but Batman, Bat Family, and Teen Titans is not really a free-to-play team. So it's kind of a difficult position to put yourself in. You could run like, some recommendations that are out there would be things like skipping Superman completely, not focusing any resources on your Justice League champions, and just going all out for Bat Family champions, trying to get those as high as you can, like the 10 shard regular mythics, and then going for your Constantine Zatanna build, and then whatever ambles you have left over going for Nightwing, which would give you a pretty decent Bat Family Teen Titans team that you could go for. And then on a rerun, you could try to get Starfire into the lineup as well. It's very long term. I do think that it's more of a spend heavy way to go. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't say that there are options also where you could just focus on just one champion and just put everything you have into them. I've seen it effectively done with Nightwing, where you can't quite get them to red stars, but you could definitely get a high purple, low yellow Nightwing if you just hard save all the way through to Nightwing and go for him that way. But again, the issue there is you are going to have to figure out a way to develop those Bat Family champions. So kind of problematic for free-to-play players to do it that way. Maybe a little bit easier for some light spenders who are willing to daily deal a little bit. That's really all there is to this bleed strategy guide in terms of trying to help you with picking your team and just going for them. I tried to give you a few different options. There's some options for spenders, options for non-spenders, and really it's just build whichever way you want to, but you need to understand that, especially with the heavy monetization on things like the death metal champions now, you really do need to pick one thing and go for it. And I don't want to say you're going to be bored, but you're definitely going to have to skip a lot of these champions that are newer, and maybe just rely on watching some YouTube videos, or watching one of your friends play with their shiny new toy, and just being happy with what you have in your account. Use your legendaries wisely to fill in your tag synergy teams. You're going to get Harley for login reward. You're going to get a unique legacy piece in her hammer that can be helpful with champions in your roster for kind of, I guess, staying ahead of the curve early on. And you're going to have champions like Flash and Cyborg and Queen Hippolyta, who's a bleed champion for, again, light spenders and really just spenders in general to go after to kind of solidify some of their teams. You got Crypto, who is just universally one of the best healers in the game now, especially because he has an incapacitate ability for PvP. But a lot of options that you have that don't require a lot of spending. You will notice a conspicuous absence of a few champions in here. There's some of them that are just too much of a niche pick to recommend for anyone to go after them in the bleed. And then we've got others that are just such heavy paywalls, I don't even want to include them. I do have Green Lantern here. At some point in the future, we'll talk about Amazons and whether that's a viable team for anyone who isn't a whale. But I definitely have not included Amazons here because I just don't think that they are worth discussing when it comes to bleed strategy and how you should try to build your account yet. Hopefully there will be some additional champions brought in for that roster. as well as Outsiders. And we want to see more Suicide Squad, Birds of Prey. We want to see some of these lesser tag synergies actually work in the future, and we'll bring those in, and maybe have multiple bleed strategy guides in the future. We'll see. The future, I think, is still very bright for this game, and so I'm looking forward to bringing you more things like this guide. Now, that's going to do it for this particular video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. You'll get notified anytime I have new DC Dark Legion content for the game. I try to put 2 to 3 videos out a week. I have videos like this where we're going over tier lists and strategy guides. I have videos where I go over all the new big updates in the game. And then we try to do some community focused content as well, focusing on community content creators and roster reviews and that sort of thing. So really hope that you're enjoying the channel and enjoying the game, despite some of the hiccups that we've had in the last couple of weeks. And I do look forward to seeing you in the next video.